So you want to learn how to grow tomatoes at home and you're not sure how to start because you want to grow tomatoes from seed. Well, you're in the right place because I'm going to show you today how to grow tomatoes from seed. Now, before I get into the steps about planting tomato seeds, I want to make sure, do you have seeds? Because you should have already picked out some seeds at this point. So I'm going to assume you have them, but if you need some help figuring out what kind of tomatoes you should get or just some basics about tomatoes, go ahead and check out my video, Growing Tomatoes is Easy. And let's get into literally how do we go plant these seeds. So let's start with step one. Step one, we have our seeds, yay! Now I'm gonna be working with 4th of July hybrid. And one of the things you wanna do is make sure you check the back of your seed packet and it should have a recommended time of year that you're growing. So I live in Florida, I'm gonna be doing the spring growing season, which is March through May, but I could also do it again in the fall. So that is the first step. Are we in the right time of year? The next thing we need to figure out is, where are we planting them? Are we putting them directly into our vegetable bed, or are we gonna do something like putting in a container? Now today I'm gonna show you how to do it in a container, but a lot of these same steps will apply for the ground. The only thing is that if you're gonna start these seeds straight in ground, you're gonna have a few challenges like weeds could potentially grow in the area, and you'll have a little bit less control about lighting and temperature, but you can totally do it. If you're in the right season, do either, but I'm gonna show you how to do it in container today. So now that we've got our seeds, the next thing we're gonna need is soil. So when it comes to soil, tomatoes like it a little acidic. And here's the nice thing is that a lot of your bag soil that you're gonna get at the store, your Miracle Grows, your Common Organics, they are tending to be slightly acidic. So don't worry about going out and testing soil and getting pH. And that's another reason why I like to start in containers, is because you don't have to get into all the science right away and going and getting soil tests done. You can just get some plants going, which I know when I was a beginner, that's all I wanted to do. I'm like, can I just put the seeds in the soil and let's get going? So that's what we're gonna do. So what I have here is a mix of the kind of classic Miracle Grow stuff that you can get at like a Home Depot or Lowe's. It's 50% potting soil, 50% in-ground soil. Why? Well, that's what I had, so I mixed them up in this and I've been using it for a lot of different things. If you were gonna do a container, you could do all potting soil. That is totally workable. I just did a project with my mom and we did all potting soil. But when it comes to seeds, I do like having a little bit less fluff, because you'll find with potting soil, because they're trying to get a lot of aeration, it can be a little too floaty, I feel like, for little seedlings. So I just like to use a 50-50 mix, but I think you can do it either way. So what you'll often find when it comes to the soil is it is dry, like super dry. So this is something that I have learned over time. So get yourself a nice little container. This one was free because I had already bought a plant and I don't throw them away. So I like to hang on to these, whether you buy flowers or vegetable starts when you first get going, you hang on to these. And what we're gonna first do is we're gonna fill this up, and you can kind of notice there's like a little line indentation thing here. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? I'm gonna fill it up to about there. So that's about a half a thumbnail lower than this before I add water. Because once we add water, it's gonna like tighten up a little bit, but we're just gonna kind of fill it up to there. And it's really nothing more than that at this moment. So let's fill up. Now when it comes to your bag soil, you might find nice little clumps like this. Let's not put that right in there. What we want to do is use your shovel or your hand and break that up, because your seed's really not going to do well with a nice little rock of soil. They usually break up pretty easily, so you shouldn't have any real hard time. And yes, feel free to use your hands. Get a little dirty. It's okay. I enjoy it. Also, sometimes it's a little bit more efficient when you're trying to dig out of the bag. So now we've got our tray, and you could have done something like this. So these ones I actually started in this size container because I had them sitting around, and this had some peppers in it which I was waiting to free up. So they can handle something this size. There is nothing wrong with that. So don't think like, oh, I have to get a tray this size or something smaller. You can do it this big. It's totally fine. Use what you've got first. That's what I always like to do. If you were gonna buy something, well, one, just go buy some starts and have some fun, and then just reuse the tray. I find that better. So now that we got our tray filled up and we've got a little bit of space, don't worry if this isn't perfect. Plants are super forgiving. But the next thing I used to do was then put the seed in, and that always created problems because the reality is that soil is like a giant sponge. And if you've ever had a sponge get really dry in your sink and then like the water turns on, you'll notice at first that the water just kind of bounces off the sponge and it does not get absorbed. Well, the same thing happens with your soil. You kind of have to run it over that sponge in the sink before it really starts to puff up. And the same thing will happen with your soil. So before we add the seed, if we were to add the seed now and then add the water, what will often happen is the seed will go running around and then it won't be at the right depth that we're gonna want. So we wanna add water first to this. So whether you go and take it to a hose and just kind of water it down, or if you have a watering can, this is the next step. So I don't know if you guys can see this, how the water is just kind of running over everything and not actually getting absorbed right away. Totally normal. That is what happens with these types of soils. Now, one of the things you want to make sure is whatever container you use has holes in the bottom. Otherwise, you're going to have problems with the soil later, having funguses, which are not good for your tomato plant. Not the good type of fungi that we want in our soil. So we're just going to keep watering and watering and watering. And it's going to get kind of a lumpy look, and that's okay. And if you can, I don't know, can you guys see this? Or maybe you can hear it. Lots of water's pouring off this bucket right now. That's not unusual. Oh man, this is a lot heavier. and I'm getting a swampy hand. So I want to show you kind of the difference. You saw how fluffy it was, but even as I'm moving it around, you can see there's still some dry spots. And that's okay. We're gonna add some more water right after we put the seed in. But we're just gonna kind of even some of these out. And you'll see that there's like some little pieces of mulchy type stuff in there. Just get rid of those. And I mean, don't dig through it, but if it's super obvious, then just move it around. So what you can do when you have these type of seeds is you wanna you're kind of making sure your odds of your little tray are gonna be successful. So you can tell I put, 3 seeds in this one. Looks like I must have put 4 in this one. I thought I only put 2 to 3 in each one, but apparently 4. And what we're gonna do is these seeds are small. They're really small. And usually seed size is a good way to figure out how deep should it go. If it's a bean, it should go deep, right? If the bean's this big, then it's usually about that far deep that you want it to go. With something like a tomato seed, which is very tiny, right? These are not gonna do well a whole finger length into the ground. So what we're gonna do is we're actually just gonna pull back the soil just a little bit. And that is where we're gonna put our seed. And we're gonna just put a dab of soil back on top of it. Literally like just a hair nail below the surface. And just a touch of soil on top. And I will bring you in closer for the next row so you can see this. You can see I am like barely moving. I'm just like literally moving the soil aside. Just a touch. And just enough to get these itty bitty seeds in. And then I'm just like just putting a tiny bit of soil on top. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. And because all the soil is all wet already, it's not gonna require me to go dumping a ton of water on it, which would obviously wash away what little soil is on there. So we're just gonna get a little bit more in there. And because they're so tiny, they can kind of just like stick to your fingernails. Sometimes you gotta kind of smudge them around. And don't go crazy with how many you put in there, because honestly, you should get, if you got a decent seed packet, you should get a pretty good yield. And the other thing is like I don't like to use up all my seeds all at once, because especially when you're new, like you mess up. You get the temperature wrong, you leave them to dry out, all sorts of stuff happens. It just happens. So keeping some of the seeds behind Then if you mess up, you can start again. So now we have these in the ground. And one of the big things we're gonna wanna do as we wait for these to sprout is just like a light misting of water. What we wanna do is make sure that the soil at the bottom is staying wet, but we do not wanna drown these things because you definitely can overflow this and your seeds will go like off into the distance. So make sure you don't, like having one of the little ends on this that kind of like diffuses the water so it's not like a big stream like this is, will help make sure that you don't unearth all your seeds and send them flying. Now you're gonna wanna make sure that you just are keeping this damp, not soaking wet. You do not want it to look like mud. That would be bad. But keeping it, again, kind of looking like that for the soil, that is about what you want it to look like, or just as wet as you see this now. That's about what we want it to look like. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna take you about 7, 10, up to 14 days, depending on your temperatures and the climate and how much sun's hitting it and how well you water it, for them to sprout. And once they sprout, this is what they look like, or this. So you'll see they'll have 2 little skinny leaves that pop up. That's what you're gonna be looking for. Now these have been up out of the ground for about half a week to 7 days max. And they're already starting to get their second set of leaves. Now these are not their true leaf types. This is just what we kind of have as a sprouting leaf. So that's what you'll be looking for. If you're past 2 weeks, if you've been on the cooler side, they may just be hanging out and waiting. I had that in my vegetable garden. I threw some seeds in and they sprouted and they looked like this all winter. And they just sat there and sat there and sat there. And then as soon as it got warm, boom, they were off to the races. And now that they're finally sprouting, your little seedlings, you're probably starting to wonder, when do I transplant these and how do I transplant them? Well, to make sure you don't miss that video, go ahead and like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. New videos each week on Friday. And while you wait, go ahead and check out this, and YouTube thinks you'll like this. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.